That was lovely, John. Calming, bringing us all together calmly. I don't think I have heard that piece since my high school glee club sang it in 1956. But it all came back to me. Welcome, everyone. It's good to see you all, and on this very last day of June, last Sunday of June. And today we also get to welcome Mike Backman, who's going to be our reflector. Mike was in Scotland yesterday, and let me know that he touched down, I think, in Boston at 4:15 p.m. I have to admit to a bit of trepidation. You know how transportation is these days, and I thought, what if I have to make up a reflection? So luckily for you, he got back, and Steve is with him, so welcome to you both. We look forward to hearing from you, Mike. There are devices in the back that are hearing devices if you need that, or large print for the hymns and the order of service. If you're new to North Chapel, we welcome you. Tatum isn't here today, but Victoria is here to take any children down. I don't see any children yet. You might be able to stay with us. Let's see. Exactly 1 year ago tomorrow, Diane Mellinger gave the reflection, and it was about her retiring from being our choir director for 30 years. And the choir was heartbroken, I would say, most of us, and thought, she's irreplaceable. What are we going to do? And I think Michael Zoldis was tasked as a member of the board to find a replacement for her. And luckily for us, joyously for us, he failed that and had to take the job himself. So we've had a wonderful continuity in the choir, and last Sunday was our last time to sing, and last Wednesday was our last time to practice with Michael, and it has been such a joy, and we have such a good choir. And so Marianne Postens and Etta and I decided that we would want to continue singing, so we are going to sing something for you, a very short introit by Bach, and another Mendelssohn, which was written by Mendelssohn for his oratorio Elijah, and it's sung by 3 angels. So we'll do our best. The angels were there to comfort Elijah because he was about to be executed. So anyway, we've had fun practicing it, and the thought came to me, there's so many good voices in our choir, and so many good musicians, that maybe during the summer we'll do quartets or quintets as we used to do, and you can figure it out, and Michael will help us, which he's going to help us today. So I think, let's see, what else? There are lots of announcements always in the order of service, so please look at that. And I think Hope has an announcement.
Good morning. So on July 19th, the worship committee is putting together a service where 3 people will share the reflection time and give their take or thoughts on July's worship theme, which is Go to the Woods. So we would ask those 3 or 4 people to speak for about 3 or 4 minutes each. One way that we've thought about it sometimes, if it feels intimidating to write your own mini reflection, you could share a reading of someone else's words that speak to the theme that's meaningful to you. And that also works really well. And Anne McSood reminded me to remind you, it's fun. It is fun. It is fun. Anyway, so we're still looking for a couple of people to participate in that reflection in that way. And so if you would be interested in being one of those people, please see me after the service.
At our Music and Worship Committee meeting that we have once a month, in first Tuesday of the month, in the June meeting, Molly McHugh read a poem. And honestly, I have thought of that poem every single day since, and I'm sure I will continue to do that. Even just the first few lines has stayed with me. And also I'm going to read it to you and see if you like it. It's called Just for Now by Donna Folds. Just for now, without asking how, let yourself sink into stillness. Just for now, lay down the weight you so patiently bear upon your shoulders. Feel the earth receive you, and the infinite expanse of the sky grow even wider as your awareness reaches up to meet it. Just for now, allow a wave of breath to enlighten your experience. Breathe out whatever blocks you from the truth. Just for now, be boundless and free, with awakened energy tingling in your hands and feet. Drink in the possibility of being who and what you really are, so fully alive that the world looks different, newly born and vibrant, just for now. When I heard Molly read the poem, I thought, well, I can do those things. I can do all of them for a short time, but I can't do them all the time. And then I realized that just for now is the only time. There is no other time but now. So the task is to do it all the time, and I'm working it. If you like the poem, I'll send it to you and we can work it together. And now we have a time of quiet meditation. Make this higher for you. Oops, frame you. It's good. Is that good? Wait a second.
Good morning. And welcome to church. My name is Mike Backman. I'm a longtime member of the society. I grew up in Provo, Utah. My father was a religion professor at Brigham Young University. That is about as Mormon as you can get. Mormonism is full of absolutes. Things are right or wrong, black or white. There's very little room in the middle on many issues. We were encouraged as young kids to develop a testimony, essentially a personal faith statement, and then to share this testimony frequently in church meetings, at family gatherings, with friends and strangers. And these testimonies were full of absolutes, such as, I know that the Mormon church is true. I know that Joseph Smith was a prophet of God. Even as a young kid, there was a bit of a skeptic in me. And I began to wonder, but how can we really know anything? Especially as I'd look around and see people in other churches and faiths who seemed to know what they believed. These absolutes extended to other areas of our lives as well. And perhaps the most absolute of all was that every little boy would grow up to one day fall in love and want to be with a girl. I've always been drawn to theater. Many of you have been to productions I've been involved with here in Woodstock or around the Upper Valley. I've often wondered if my attraction to theater, indeed the reason so many gay kids are drawn to theater, is that as we face these absolutes in our lives and began to realize that some of those absolutes weren't quite so absolute for us, if theater provided a safe space for us to escape from the absolutes of this world and allowed us to step into the shoes of somebody else, even if just for a short time. I know it was because of theater that I really began to explore other religious ideas. I remember in high school thinking, okay, if I'm really going to be an actor, I have to be able to think like anybody else, which includes believing like anybody else. I remember deliberately sitting down at one point to think through, could I ever really understand what it's like to be an atheist? Initially, I thought, no way, that is too far out there. I don't think I could ever make sense of that. But it did not take me long stepping into those shoes with the idea that I was doing it for character development before realizing there was a lot about that world that actually kind of made sense to me. I was not ready, however, to step into the shoes of someone who was gay. This was the 1970s, and there was nothing positive out there about being gay. There were no gay characters on TV. Everything about being gay was horrible. Gay people were psychopathic, homicidal, sex-starved, flamboyant, child molesting. The list went on and on. And there was nothing that provided a positive alternative to the hateful, vile messages we got about what it was to be gay. And yet deep down, I knew there was something up. I knew from junior high and all through high school that every time I'd walk down the hall at school and a boy and a girl were walking in front of me, that I was always looking at the boy. Most of my best friends were girls. I was so much more comfortable around girls. I never felt anxious. I never felt butterflies in my stomach when I was with my girlfriends, the way I felt when I was around many of the boys. And I knew I could never take PE. I never once took PE in high school, always got out of it doing other things, as I was terrified that changing my clothes and showering with other boys might reveal the deep, dark, hidden secrets that I knew were lurking deep inside. After high school, all good Mormon boys were encouraged to go on a mission. We donned our white shirts and ties and went out into the world to tell people about our church. In the time leading up to my mission, I began to wonder if I should go. as I was learning the mission lessons. And we were expected to repeat word for word in those days. These lessons were filled with absolute statements that I was really uncomfortable with, such as, I know that the principle I've just been teaching you about is from God. My spiritual advisor at the time, my Mormon bishop, was a philosophy professor at BYU. Kind of oxymoronic now that I think about it. But Tom Rogers, one of my great mentors in life, he and I would sit and talk and spar and philosophize for what seemed to me to be hours. And I told Tom how uncomfortable I was with these absolute statements that we were expected to say in the mission lessons. And I told him I was really wondering if I should go on a mission. Tom still encouraged me to go, saying that I should just feel that I could go out and tell people about the church. But he encouraged me never to compromise how I felt, never to say anything that I wasn't totally comfortable with. And so I enlisted. And my first assignment was in Rome, Italy. On the day I arrived in Rome, I sat down with the mission president there, and I very confidently told him what I was prepared to do as a missionary, and equally important to me, what I was not prepared to do. I was not going to be saying these absolute statements that we were expected to say in the mission lessons. I didn't know at the time, but this man had just retired as a colonel in the U.S. Air Force. A by-the-books kind of man who did not take well to my cockiness. I got off on the wrong foot with this man, and I stayed on the wrong foot the whole time. I hated a mission. I hated the structure. I hated being around all this guy energy. We had to be with the other missionaries 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You could never go off on your own. All the other boys wanted to do in our free time was play basketball. And we'd sit around and we'd talk in private, and they'd talk about girls in really offensive ways. I had no problem not talking about girls as sex objects. I didn't understand why they were having to do so. I was miserable as a missionary, and I made everyone around me miserable. But I was not going to go home early. I knew the gossip that went on back in Provo about boys who went home early from their missions. I was not going to subject myself nor my family to that kind of gossip. So I stuck it out, but I was miserable. But it did make for the material for a play that I would later write. We actually performed this play, Sunset it's called, at Shaker Bridge Theater in 2018. And the play had its very beginning right in this room. We did 4 years before that, we did a reading of a one-act version of the play for a fundraiser for the Life and Hope Association right here. A story based very much on my experience as a missionary, at a time when I'm supposed to be out in the world telling people that they needed to be Mormon to find God and happiness, while I was seriously wondering if Mormonism would even have a place in my own life after the mission. And all the while, realizing I had fallen in love for the first time with one of the boys I was serving with. Actually, 2 of the boys. One at the beginning of my mission and one near the end. I merged them into one character in the play. These 2 boys were different from the others. We'd sit and we'd talk and we'd philosophize and we'd laugh. And as we got closer and closer to each other, they let me start giving them back rubs innocently. And we would wrestle. And they awakened in me thoughts and feelings and desires that I had never experienced before. I came away from my mission knowing even admitting to myself that I had indeed fallen in love with these two boys. But I also believed the lie that deep down inside of every single person there is a heterosexual part just waiting to come out. And I honestly believed that one day a woman would walk into my life who would give me the same thoughts and feelings and desires that I knew I had felt for these two mission companions. College was great. I went to the University of Utah in Salt Lake City, a perfect place for me, as it's a place full of people like me who had grown up Mormon but were falling away. I got in with a great group of friends in an outdoor club. We'd go hiking and skiing and camping, and I stayed very involved in theater all through college. Every summer I performed in summer theater at the Sundance Resort. And it was there at Sundance that I first became aware of guys who were gay. Now, I don't remember how I learned that they were gay, because this was still not a time anybody spoke openly about this. But I remember watching these boys carefully, cautiously, so no one would pick up that I was checking things out, to see if there was anything I could relate to. It was also in college that I found my faith community. One of the girls I had done a play with at the U invited me to her church to see a little theatrical production they were doing. This was the First Unitarian Church of Salt Lake City. I went and I grabbed every pamphlet I could find and I just ate it up. Here was a faith community that valued my questions as much as it valued the answers I would find to those questions, knowing that the answers I find today about God or truth or life are just going to lead to more questions tomorrow. And here was a faith community that encouraged my questions, encouraged my constant seeking. I realized I had secretly been a Unitarian my whole life. I immediately got involved with the church, ended up teaching little kids in Sunday school my last couple of years of college. After college, I taught high school for 2 years. And it was in my second year of teaching at a very small school in a very small town in central Utah that I met Linda Ballard. Linda ran the computer lab at the school. She was kind of a tomboy. She and I, being two of the very few single people in town, hit it off. We started doing a lot together. Linda started hinting early on that maybe we should be more than just friends. I was kind of taken aback, played coy at first. I knew I was growing to love Linda very much as a friend. We'd give each other back rubs, we would wrestle, but I didn't have any of the same thoughts and feelings and desires for Linda that I remembered having for the two mission companions I knew I had fallen in love with. But eventually, midway through the year, I agreed we could try. I told Linda right up front that I had always wondered if I was gay. I didn't think that I was. But here I was now in my later 20s, still a virgin, so I really couldn't say for sure. Linda said she understood, said it was okay, and so we began. And the very first night after Linda and I were together, I had my first dream, a sleeping dream at night, where I was intimate with a man. I'd had similar dreams to this in the past, but always before the person I was intimate with in my dreams was kind of a half man, half woman, which led me to think, yes, there is a heterosexual part of me somewhere deep in there. But here I was after having experienced intimacy with a woman for the first time, and I was dreaming about a man. And what terrified me was the man I dreamed about that night was one of the guys I had performed with at Sundance, who I knew was gay and I knew was living back in Salt Lake. The more Linda and I were together, the more I thought about and longed to be with a man. I soon called things off. We had a very rough end to that school year. But Linda today remains one of my very best friends. She's one of my soulmates for life. At the end of that school year, I knew I needed a change. Teaching just wasn't as fulfilling as I had hoped it would be. So, what does one do when you have no idea what you want to be when you grow up? I went back to school. I enrolled in a master's program back at the University of Utah, moved back to Salt Lake, immediately reconnected with some of my theater and outdoor friends, immediately started teaching little kids in Sunday school again at the First Unitarian Church. And it was early in that next school year that this beautiful woman, a student I had met through the grad program, came on to me. Now, this was not my experience. I didn't have beautiful women hitting on me. So in a last-ditch attempt to prove to myself that, yes, there was a heterosexual somewhere in there, I agreed to go out. I didn't have an emotional connection with this woman the way I had had with Linda the year before. And the only way I could get through an experience with this woman was to close my eyes and think about a man. And my world fell apart. It was as if I was in a dinghy in a turbulent sea, and the bottom fell out, and I'm now flailing about in the rough waters, and every wave that crashed over my head was filled with the hateful, vile messages about being gay that I had grown up with that were now trying to force me under the water and drown me. I withdrew into a little bubble. I dropped out of the grad program. I resigned from teaching Sunday school. The head of religious ed called, the minister called, some of the parents of the kids I had been teaching reached out. But I was so full of shame and confusion and embarrassment about what I knew I now had to face that I pushed everyone away. The only person at this time that I spoke to about what was really going on was a wonderful counselor at the university I started seeing. He got me through this time. Of course, I fell in love with him. We spent many sessions talking about what that meant. How did that make me feel? But he literally got me through this darkest period of my life. And I soon came to realize that there was no way I was going to allow myself to explore what I knew I needed to there in Utah. There were too many family events constantly pulling me back in. There were very Mormon events. There was too much history of who I had portrayed myself to be in this world for me to ever comfortably try something so new and so different there in Utah. And so I ran away, fled to San Francisco, that magical emerald city by the bay, where nobody cares who you are, or what you do, or whom you love. Now my excuse, because I still had to have an excuse for everything that I did, was that I was going there to study acting at the American Conservatory Theater. But it was more that I just had to get away. And for the next 2 years, I slowly built confidence in who I was. I tried on a lot of different shoes while I was there. I went to the gay bars, quickly realized that the whole club scene was not for me. But I tried different social groups and affinity groups, and everything that I tried was okay. My main connection to the gay world ended up being at a church, a small community church right in the heart of the Castro district, the overwhelmingly gay part of San Francisco. I started attending a Sunday evening service that was billed as kind of a gospel-style service. We spent much of the service each Sunday just singing praise songs. Here was a room full of gay men and lesbians and transgender people, many of whom were battling with HIV and AIDS, and we would sing our hearts out. Sing for compassion. Sing for understanding. Sing for acceptance. Sing for love. And the messages preached from the pulpit each Sunday kept reinforcing the fact that God, that the universe loves us all, no matter who we are, no matter what we do, no matter whom we love. Such a healing, powerful place. And 2 years after I moved to San Francisco in the summer of 1991, 35 years ago, while sitting in a church service one Sunday night, that handsome devil, Steve Swayne, played the piano, and I was mesmerized. I had to get to know him. Steve and I became fast friends, and as our friendship deepened through that summer and into the fall, by fall we had clearly become each other's best friend. We had contact with each other pretty much every single day. And finally, in October of 1991, Steve and I decided to cross the line and explore what it would mean for us to be life partners. And we've never looked back since. Now, the story of our courtship, the story of our merging our very different lives together, the stories of my taking Steve home to meet my family in Utah for the first time, well, those are all for another time and another place, perhaps some a coffee hour. I want to close just briefly talking a bit about my experience with my faith community when I began to come out. This was the first Unitarian Church of Salt Lake City, because it was not really there for me the way I needed it to be. Now, this was a very different time. This was the 1980s, but there was not a single out person in the congregation at the time. There was never any mention from the pulpit of LGBTQ issues. Steve and I have been back to visit the church since then. I think there are a few straight people who belong there now. But it's a very different place now. The church was taking steps even then to become a welcoming congregation, but even then it seemed to me that when the subject came up, it was done kind of in sotto voce, with people looking around to make sure children weren't present, because this was not something appropriate to talk about with kids around. All adding to the idea that there was something shameful about being gay. The church had voted unanimously to allow a newly formed gay Christian congregation to use our sanctuary on Sunday afternoons, as no Christian church in Salt Lake would allow openly gay people to worship at the time. And this was being progressive. This was being welcoming. But the overwhelming message that came down to me at the time was that, yes, we are a welcoming congregation for them, for those people. But in the fall of 1988, when I began to realize that I could no longer hide from this part of me I had been suppressing my whole life, I wanted to shout to the congregation, but I don't want to be a them. I still want to be an us. I still want to be part of us. But I want to have the freedom and feel the support to explore this part of me I've been hiding from my whole life. And I didn't feel that I could do that there. Probably wrongly so. As we explore and reaffirm what it means for us to be a welcoming congregation, let the message that we send to the world not be that we are a welcoming congregation for them, for there are clearly core members of the society now who identify as LGBTQ. And there very well may be others in our midst who are somewhat fluid with their own sexual or gender awareness, who would welcome a safe space for them to explore something new. Let the message that we send to the world be that the North Universalist Chapel Society of Woodstock, Vermont is an open and affirming, indeed a welcoming congregation for all. For all of us. For all of us. Amen.